Hello everybody, the mid-season draft is about a week away. It's a big event for Essendon because we're going to have potentially 4 picks in it if we do use all 4. I think we're certainly going to use at least 3 and we could use all 4. We're going to talk all about that right now. So an interesting little tidbit that hasn't been discussed in regards to the mid-season draft is the order of the draft and a little variable that may affect Essendon in the wrong way. So if you look at the ladder, the way the normal ladder is portrayed, it's portrayed by just premiership points. It doesn't matter how many games you've played. If you have more premiership points than the other teams, you will be on top of them. And if teams have the same points, separated by percentage, just like normal. But because teams have played a different number of games because of the Essendon Gold Coast postponed match, really the ladder is kind of not being portrayed in a mathematically accurate way, and the AFL have decided that according to the draft order, the ladder will be portrayed in, I guess, what you'd call match ratio, wins as a percentage of games played, which I think is the correct way to do it, I might add. I think the normal ladder should be portrayed that way now during the season, wins as a percentage of games played, like they do in American sport where teams have played different numbers of games, and you use, this team's won 60% of their games, so they're higher than a team that's won 55%. What's interesting is, at the moment, we're behind, say, Geelong and the Bulldogs on the ladder, so you'd think we'd have a pick before them in the draft. But if we beat Richmond and move to 6 wins, the loser of Geelong and the Bulldogs, whoever it is, will also be on 6 wins. On the AFL normal ladder, they'll be above us on percentage, because we've got a terrible percentage of 81. But according to the, I guess you'd call it the match ratio ladder, the wins as a percentage of games played, we are doing better than them. We have 6 wins and 4 losses. That's if we win on the weekend. We've won 60% of their games, which is better than 6 wins and 5 losses. And that means that either the Bulldogs or Geelong would have a pick ahead of us in the draft, as well as potentially teams like Freo, teams that are, above us on the ladder as it's portrayed now, but we would actually be, by virtue of our lucky wins against some of those bottom teams, we would actually be behind them in the draft order, which is, I can't really complain. I mean, I'm a kind of, as you probably guessed, I'm a bit of a numbers guy. I'm a stickler for things being mathematically accurate. I think that's important. I think the ladder should be portrayed now with the match ratio system, but it is kind of, it does seem kind of funny and a little unusual to see us, down the draft order in the wrong direction, and a team like Geelong or the Bulldogs, who are premiership contenders and miles ahead of us, let's face it, actually above us in the draft, because 6 wins and 4 losses is, if it is 6 wins and 4 losses, if we do win, is better than 6 wins and 5 losses as wins as a percentage of games played. So that is an unusual little variable and not a good thing for Essendon. As for the draft itself, I think one thing that has to be discussed with Essendon is if we pick 4 players, we have at the moment around 43 players on the list, and as you know, at the end of every season there are delistings, tradings, and coaches and the like have many tough decisions to make in regards to the list. We are sort of temporarily going to have as many as 47 players on the list. Now that's actually not quite true, because the 4 players that temporarily come off the list, the 4 players with long-term injuries, are technically not on the list. Sam Draper, Nick Bryan, Lewis Hayes and Tom Edwards, of course, come off the list temporarily. But they're kind of not really off the list, because even though they can't play for the rest of the season because they're on the inactive list, they'll come back onto the list. So when we select these extra 4 players, or potentially 4 players, we're going to have effectively kind of 47 on the list, which means that we're going to have to delist a lot more players. So imagine if you're a fringe player or someone in the VFL, maybe like a Jaden Nguyen or someone like that, who is kind of, borderline, or even someone like in the seniors, like a Jai Menzie, or even Todd Goldstein, who wants to play another season, sort of as a backup ruckman. And, as a club with 43 on the list, you're sort of looking at, there might be 5 or 6 delistings or whatever. Well, now that could mean 10 delistings, because there's 4 extra players now coming onto the list that are essentially in competition with a lot of players who, in the VFL, who are, touch and go as to whether they'll get a spot on the list next year. Not just those that are out of contract, but you say even those that are in contract that might want to look at getting traded or whatever. So it's a kind of a delicate situation for Essendon to be in, to add 4 players to the list or in direct competition. Imagine how you'd be feeling if you're kind of on the borderline of being delisted at the end of this season. Anyway, you're sort of on the fringe, and then all of a sudden 4 new players come into the team, and those players are kind of at your level, VFL level, and they could go ahead of you. So I think that's an interesting thing to discuss, and it'll certainly make for some very, very delicate discussions as the season nears its end, and especially given the performance of the 3 or 4 players we're going to pick in the draft, how they go and whether they can establish themselves into the senior team. We'll see, which is going to put a lot of pressure on some of those fringe players in the VFL. So what should we do with the mid-season draft, given that we're going to have so many picks? Well, I'm a believer that the first pick, you should just pick the best available young player. When I say young, someone under the age of 21, doesn't have to be a 19-year-old or anything, but someone who could be a potential 10-year player. Just pick the best available young player. Then with the second pick, I think we need to pick a ruckman as backup, obviously, given our ruck stocks, and that would be a mature age ruckman probably. And then I think you probably start looking at positional players or needs-based players with the last 2 picks. They may pass with the 4th pick potentially and just go with the 3. So a couple of players that haven't been mentioned that much that I think Essendon might be looking at. One is Cooper Herbert, who plays for the Quarter Cannons. Quarter Cannons are loosely affiliated with Essendon. They've got Adam Swade and some of our NGA prospects playing for them. He's 191 centimetres. He's kind of a midfielder forward. He's shown that he has the ability to play across multiple positions. He's very adaptable. He's tall. He's got a solid frame. He's really known for his clean hands and goal sense. That's what everyone says about him, that he's got good skills. And that's one of the things when I was just looking at him and doing a bit of research on him. That's one thing that has always been critical of Essendon is our skills. Someone who's got clean hands and skills and good goal sense could be ideal for us. He's also known as having a pretty good work rate and work ethic and that sort of thing. It's been talked that he can be a little bit inconsistent, and that's obviously something that is not particularly unusual for someone who's 19. But I think this is a player that hasn't been mentioned that much, that Essendon will be looking at pretty closely. So as for the ruck, there was a lot of talk about Cooper Keogh, but he has injured himself, so that won't be happening. He won't be being picked up. So Braden Crosley still is no doubt being considered, given that he fits the right profile in terms of his age, he's a mature ruckman. He's not necessarily regarded as being that athletic, but he's a competitor, and he could certainly help us for the remainder of the season as a backup ruckman. But if Essendon don't want to go down that path, they could select Ajan Kwal Mun. He plays for Port Melbourne in the VFL, and he's still got a long way to go in terms of learning the craft. But in terms of his age, he's 22 or maybe 23, so he's basically fully developed. He's got elite athleticism. He recorded a 90-centimetre vertical jump at the state draft combine. He has developed very, very quickly, transitioning from soccer to Australian rules football. He's 205 centimetres. He does have limited experience, but if Essendon are taking a more longer-term approach, and they're not so worried about this season, and they're happy to play out the season with Vigo Vicentini and Todd Goldstein just in the side and Peter Wright helping out, then this guy might be a good fit in terms of a developing ruckman who's still young enough and still has got a potential 7 or 8 year career if he can make the grade. He's an incredible athlete, and it's just a debate. Do you want Braden Crosley, who can come straight in, or do you want this guy who is old enough to come straight in? He's not a kid, but he's just a really great athletic prospect. So that's another one to consider for the Bombers. Michael Selwood is another interesting choice. No relation. The name is spelt with 2 L's. He is 22 years old, so mature age. I like these sort of mature age ones where you don't necessarily have to sit through the 3 or 4 years of development, but you can still get the immediate impact of them. He's from Western Australia, from the Waffle for Peel Thunder. Matt Rosa has a history of liking players from there because, of course, he comes from, or doesn't originally come from Western Australia, but was drafted to the West Coast Eagles and, has a bit of knowledge of West Australian football. So he's a halfback intercept defender regarded as a bit of a tough as nails player. He averages 24 possessions for Peel Thunder in the waffle. He's a good intercept mark. He has 7.5 marks per game. He's regarded as really good at reading the play and intercepting attacks. His kicking proficiency is pretty good. He's a left footer. He's good at transferring the ball from defence to attack. He's regarded as a big game player too. He's played in 3 consecutive grand finals with Peel Thunder. He also played for the WAFL state team. So this is a player that, once again, hasn't been mentioned that often if you look at people talking about mid-season draft prospects. But given he's from WA and we know how Matt Rosa likes those kind of players, I think he's a very, very good player and a potential pick by Essendon. He's a very consistent performer. He got a bit of experience, but still at the right age. Mature age defender. He can read the play and he's got composure under pressure. All those things. So I think he's someone we should be looking at pretty closely. As for forwards or players that we might pick with our 3rd or 4th pick, someone like Oscar Smart, who plays in the Essendon VFL side, so a lot of Essendon supporters that watch the VFL might be familiar with him. He's got good goal sense, does like to kick goals, and he's pretty successful in doing so. 180 centimetres. He's pretty versatile, pretty athletic. He's got, regarded as having explosive power. His defensive pressure is reasonable, and he seems to perform in showcase matches as well. He impressed with the Young Gun series, recording 22 disposals, 5 clearances, and a couple of goals against Vic Country. It is a bit of a school of thought that he needs to improve on his consistency and physical development and things like that. But given that his existing, involvement with Essendon's VFL team, and that he would have trained, with the seniors, I'm sure, at various times, and his familiarity with the club, he could be a pretty good pickup as well with one of those 3rd or 4th picks. As well, Richmond VFL player Massimo Rasso, he is someone I've talked about in a previous video. Only drawback for Massimo Rasso, he's really, really small, 171 centimetres. But he's agile, has good ground level prowess, goal sense, all that sort of stuff, versatile, knows how to kick a goal, knows where the goals are. Just a physical stature and inexperience as well. And he's a first-year VFL player. It might hold him back a little bit. But just if you want that sort of goal-kicking, small forward down there, or someone that could give us a bit of excitement down there, or someone that could at least push for Caco's spot, if you like, or at least, if not get Caco's spot, but at least sort of give a little bit of competition there, Massimo Rasso could be a good pickup for us. The other forward whose name keeps popping up is Liam McMahon, plays for Carlton. He's got good aerial ability, 194 centimetres. He was originally drafted by Collingwood 4 years ago, but I'm sure that someone will pick him up in this draft. I reckon that's an almost certainty. He's been a very consistent goal scorer, versatile, and he's also regarded as someone with leadership qualities. He has had disciplinary, problems. He's missed a couple of matches due to suspension here and there. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that's a show of that he's an aggressive type of player and can sometimes be a bit of a positive. But look, if you're looking for another forward, he is one that someone will pick up, and I'm sure he's on Essendon's radar as well. I can't list, obviously, every player that's there in the mid-season draft, and only the recruiters really know exactly who they're looking for and who they're going to pick. But a couple of names that keep popping up if Essendon is going to look for a defender is another Richmond VFL player, Mutaz El Noor. He's a key defender. He's a strong marking player. He's got strong physical presence. He's got a bit of experience at VFL level. He may need to improve his lateral movement. There's a bit of talk that he sort of can't keep up with the agile forwards. But look, he could address the need for a key defender, given that obviously Ridley is now out for an extended period of time, and whether we want another player in there to help Laverty. Charlie McCartan is another highly regarded pick that will probably almost certainly go in this draft at some point. He's a tall defender. He also has strong aerial skills, has the ability to read the play, comes from a good system down there in Geelong. It's always good, comes from a footballing family. He does have limited exposure to the higher competition levels. He may need a bit of an adjustment period, I guess you could say. He's the younger brother of Paddy McCartan. Collingwood are apparently interested in him and all over him, but we'll probably obviously have an opportunity before the Pies if we wanted to go that way. So we'll see how that one goes. He is another player that keeps coming up and getting talked about. So there we have it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you think we should do in the draft. Should we just pick the best player with the first pick? I think we should. I think that's the way to go. Then I think we should go for a ruckman, and then I think we should just go according to need, maybe a small forward, and then maybe a key defender. But it all depends on who picks up the other players in the draft. We just don't know what position we're going to land in. So let me know in the comments what you think. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button and the notification bell. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.